Hello, I'm State Representative Jesse Topper of the 78th District in Fulton, Bedford, and Franklin counties. Now, many residents of our district have been asking questions about the state budget, and I'm often asked where the process stands with this year's budget and how that affects the plan that needs to be passed by June 30th of this year. On today's program, I'll pose those same questions to my guest and my friend, Majority Appropriations Chairman, Representative Bill Adolph. Representative Adolph, welcome.
Nice to be here.
So in a broad sense, how is the money being spent right now? What areas receive the most funding in our budget?
Well, there's two categories. Number one is the education budget, okay? If you include higher ed, it's roughly anywhere between 40 to 41% of the total budget. The second department is human services. Right around 38%, Jess. And after that, you have a Department of Corrections, I think dropped down to 9%. And then you have some debt service at about 4%. And everything else fills in the blanks.
Can you give us a bit of a timeline for what's gone on during this? Many have called it a budget impasse, even though there is a current budget in place. But can you go over that timeline of what's gone on?
Well, if you want to go back to June, which I think we should, okay, back in June of 2015, both the House and the Senate passed a budget, $30.2 billion, a little over 3% increase in spending over the year before. The governor vetoed it. Now, Jess, that was the first time in my lifetime that a governor vetoed an entire budget. I've been around for a few years, and every once in a while a governor will blue line a budget that gets passed in June. But an entire veto was the first of its kind. So what happened is that July 1st, states continued to collect money, but the money was not going out to agencies. It was going out to state employees, okay, because of the Fair Labor court ruling several years ago, that state employees, if they went to work, they got paid. So that was one of the reasons why things were so quiet around here during the months of July and August, because state employees were getting paid, unlike in years past, okay? However, once the schools opened up, the schools were relying on local property taxes, all the taxes that they generate locally. Where I live, we have a lot of parochial schools. They were not receiving any money for any textbooks and that type of stuff. Okay, higher ed, Pittsburgh, Penn State, Temple, Lincoln, they were non-preferred appropriation. They were not receiving anything. State system universities, 14 state universities, they weren't receiving a single dime. Students' FIA grants, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 grants to go to school, they were not receiving anything. So it was really pretty paralyzing, in my opinion, especially the smaller nonprofits, rape crisis centers, domestic violence centers, our county services, your counties that you represent, they rely on a lot of state money. They were not receiving it. So that put us in big jeopardy. We tried to, as you know, Jess, we tried to do a stopgap budget, okay, to get 90 days worth of money out to these places, because they were closing, they were laying off folks, but we got it to his desk and he vetoed it again. Okay, so without a doubt, the governor was playing hardball. Okay, we tried to continue to work with the governor and try to get a budget in place, and then finally, they talked about we wanted to get some other issues that we've been trying to do for years, and we tried to get a pension plan, a pension reform bill to his desk. Where we tried to get a privatization bill of the liquor stores to his desk, okay? And back in June, he vetoed all of those. We tried to improve it a little bit, but it failed in the House for various reasons. And the best that we could do was we increased spending by another $100 million, moved the budget up to 30.3, which gave education about a $400 million increase. And the governor blue-lined it. And he blue-lined out of the 30.3, approximately $6.3 billion. And so when you hear, well, we never passed a budget, well, the legislature actually passed 2 budgets, okay, plus a stopgap budget. And the governor vetoed, blue line. So that's where we stand right now, Jess.
And let's talk about the blue line or the line item vetoes that have come in effect here. What have they affected? I mean, we see that throughout our districts. I mean, for those folks, it's still as though they don't have a budget.
Okay. A lot of governors have blue-lined line items in the budget, decreased the amount of spending for the most part. That's what we're talking about on certain particular line items. However, what Governor Wolf did, which was very unusual, and I'm still scratching my head over it, is he blue-lined roughly 50% of the Department of Corrections budget, and $900 million. And I'm saying to myself, how in the world can you blue-line something that is so important for public safety? And just last week, the treasurer took it upon themselves to start sending money to the Department of Corrections because they were running out of money. And even though there's a fine line there regarding constitutionality, okay, whether they had the they had the authority to send the money out because the governor had blue-lined it. But I think the treasurer did the right thing. I think public safety is number one, and but I'm sure someone's going to take the treasurer to court and question whether he has the right because the governor was going to blue-line it. So he blue-lined a couple $2 billion worth of basic education funding.
A lot of education funding.
Jess, I'm sure we're going to have schools borrowing money again. We're going to have schools, I hope they can finish the school year, okay, so kids can graduate and the school's still there. But this was all, in my opinion, strategy by the governor to force the legislature to increase spending and raise taxes.
Yeah, this does seem to be a manufactured crisis. That's what I've been talking about back home in the district. And the reason is because obviously he's looking for new revenue. And as I've often said, that revenue is not coming from a bake sale on the Capitol steps. That's coming from tax increases. We heard a lot during the last campaign about this idea of a $1 billion severance tax. That's not there. It's obvious that that money isn't in that industry. So where are these taxes coming from that he's proposing?
Well, from the working people. That's basically where the bulk of the money is coming from. Right now, the personal income tax, Pennsylvania personal income tax, is 3.07%. The governor's proposal is to increase it to 3.4%. So that will raise $1.4 billion a year. And, it's small business folks, okay, are going to have to pay that increase. And then you're talking about raising the cigarette taxes. I think there's like a dozen taxes altogether, maybe as many as 15, okay? There's a severance tax package in there, raise a couple $100 million maybe, depending on the price of the gas. But altogether, over $2 billion worth of new taxes. And this is knowing that we have a increase in some mandated expenses coming up, and it just doesn't make any sense to me. the year before this, what he calls a structural deficit, to go and increase spending at the same time. Not only for 15-16, but also increase spending again for 16-17. I just think the governor's asking too much of for the people of Pennsylvania to pay.
Now, as the Appropriations Chairman, you've been having the hearings over the past few weeks for next year's budget. Obviously, we're trying to finish out this year's budget through supplementals, but just a final question, where do we go from here? How do you see this or anticipate this working out over the next few months?
Jess, a lot of times when I'm asked a question, I can say, well, this is what we did in 2004. This is what we did in 1999. I can't tell you. I can't tell you. This is all uncharted water for us. I think you have to go back to 1955 or something under Governor Leader, where we in a situation like this, where almost a full year has gone by, and I think under Governor Leader it went like 17 months without a budget. I certainly hope we don't go there, but obviously we have to close 15-16. You know that we have to do it. So the governor and the legislature has to get together, and we're not going to be able to raise revenue, okay, at this late date, okay, to fill what the governor wants to spend for 15-16. So that's where the conversation's got to go, and then we start our normal negotiations for 16-17. However, Jess, the meetings aren't taking place, and that's the frustration of the legislature. We're not meeting with the governor and the administration. Now I'm looking forward to the budget secretary coming in front of our committee on Thursday, and hopefully we're going to find out some information from the secretary.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate you coming in and taking the time to share some of this with my constituents. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me, Jess.
That's all the time we have for today's program. Once again, I'm Representative Jesse Topper. If you have questions about what we've discussed or need assistance with any state matter, feel free to contact me at my local office or through my website. That information will be shown in a moment. Thanks for watching.